Good morning, good afternoon, good night, at whichever time of the day you are at. My name is Tina Fenton, and this is my The Creation and Recreation of Venus CFA project. And what I will be discussing is two artists, or two painters rather, over two courses of time. And one painting is an original, and the other is just a recreation of the original. So we shall begin. This is The Creation and Recreation of Venus by Tina S. Fenton. This is the agenda. This is the overview. We'll be discussing Titian and Monet. They are two painters in the 16th century. We'll be doing a description of the paintings, Venus of Urbino and Olympia. We'll be doing a compare and contrast of the two paintings. We'll be looking at the historical and cultural context and doing a representation of women in that time period. At the end, you'll see some cited sources from resources that I gained information from, and I'll also be doing just a brief overview, a general sense of what I learned and what I gained from looking at the various painters and their paintings. So let's begin. Titian. He was a leading artist in Venice, and he was known as one of the greatest painters of the Italian Renaissance. He was the oldest of four children and became an artist's apprentice as a teenager. He began to work on his first major commission for a church called Santa Maria Gloriosa, afterwards completing the Worship of Venice. Titian cultivated a broad range of royal patrons during his career, befriending writer Pietro Aretino and sculptor/architect Jacopo, and those helped to propel his art. Titian created portraits for Pope Paul III and religious and mythological pieces from Spain's Philip II, Venus and Adonis, and a piece inspired by Metamorphosis. Titian later died of a plague, leaving a legacy of works inspired by countless generations of artists. Now let's take a look at Monet. Monet became a lover of painting at a young age and went to art school and studied the old masters in Europe. At age 18, he began studying under Thomas Couture. After 6 years as a student, he opened his art studio. He then began to explore his various styles that included realism and impressionism. His art was composed of everyday subjects such as singers, street people, gypsies, and beggars. Monet's most famous works included The Luncheon on the Grass and Olympia, which was inspired by Titian's Venus of Urbino. Monet led the French transition from realism to impressionism. By the time of his death in 1883, he was a respected revolutionary artist. Now, let's take a look at the various paintings. First, Titian's Venus of Urbino. The subject matter. This image depicts a woman in her sensuality. It shows a young woman reclining on a bed, nude in the lavish setting of the Renaissance palace. The artistic style. This image is more crisp, sharp, and precise in style, using more profound colors, such as the distinct red that I will show you in a second. Such as this distinct red, as well as on the woman's skirt. Then you'll see colors that will kind of exemplify the evening, the night. It also depicts naturalism, displaying the woman in her most pure form. Monet's Olympia. Subject matter. This image depicts a woman reclining on a bed. She's nude, tended to by a maid, black, While there's a black cat on the far right, you see it's kind of dark, but the cat is glaring out at you mysteriously. The maid is presenting Olympia with a gift of flowers. The artistic style. The brush style is more blurred with stronger strokes. The colors are less vibrant and the woman is very pale. So now let's do a little compare and contrasting. As you can see, the woman is reclining on the bed. Her arm is kind of up on the pillow, just kind of relaxing. They're both just kind of reclining on the bed, relaxing. They're both nude. One woman is her skin tone is more it glows more, as this woman is a bit more pale in color. So Venus has more tone in her color. They both have legs crossed over the other. Venus's head is more laid on the pillow. It's more rested. It's more relaxed. As Olympia's head is more erect and standing, looking at you in contrast. Venus, her image is definitely, as I stated earlier, sharper image, more precise, more defined. As you see, Olympia's is more, the brushstrokes are definitely harder. And you can tell that this image it's not as pure or it's not as sharp. It's just definitely a bit more blurrier than Venus's image. Venus of Urbino has more brighter colors. It's more vibrant, as I stated earlier. As you can see, the red definitely more distinct, and the night in the background, as well as the brown. Olympia has more of a darker colors, dark brown, dark green, dark. There is a black woman kneeling in the background, maybe searching for something of some sort, and the black woman serving Olympia in this image while holding a bouquet of flowers. And if you notice, Venus is also holding a bouquet of flowers. I think they look like red roses as opposed to the flowers that are being presented to Olympia in this image. If you notice, there's a dog laying comfortably at the feet of Venus. And as I stated earlier, for Olympia, you'll notice a black cat just staring, mysteriously gazing at the viewer. Venus's left hand is placed over her genital area, covering of some sort, as Olympia's left hand is placed over her right thigh. Those are a few comparisons that I picked up in contrast to both images. Historical and cultural context. Venus of Urbino. The Renaissance began around the 1300s. Europe arose from the stagnation of the Middle Ages and experienced a time of financial growth. The Renaissance was in an age which artistic, social, scientific, and political thought turned in new directions. A new style of art and writing spread to the Netherlands, France, Germany, and England, and early writers and artists created their works in Italy due to the war. Values that shaped the Renaissance. Celebration of the individual. Artists and writers became more famous. Love of classical learning. Renaissance scholars loved the writings of ancient Greece and Rome. Enjoyment of worldly pleasures. Renaissance humanists suggested a person might love and enjoy life without offending God. Continued. Olympia. In the 19th century, political was unstable in France. The urban populations of Paris and other large cities were the target of popular prints and newspaper characters. The Salon was the major exhibition venue in the 19th century. It was the only place where professional artists had access to a large audience, which I found very, very interesting. Realist art was more than a depiction of appearances. It focused on specific facts of modern life, and it didn't deal with general principles of existence. It focused on the specific facts of modern life. It called for the spectator to see without prejudice. All realist artists, although different, had the same objective: to question schemes and conventions and display their own view of the present. Now let's take a look at some women represented in this time, or how women were represented in this time. As you can see, this is just an image of, or the facial shot of Olympia. So Monet painted a woman of his time, but not the ideal woman, a real woman. It was a Cartesian, someone who was considered a prostitute. He was painting what he saw in everyday life of seeing a white woman with a black woman servant. This is also a headshot of Venus. So Titian displayed a woman who was a symbol of marriage and sensuality. It reminded the woman of her marital obligations to her husband. The eroticism of the painting represents Venus, the goddess of love, as a sensual and delectable woman captivating her audience. These are the cited sources where I gained my resources from, or where I looked at the resources to gain the information. So in conclusion, these are some of my notes, some of the things that I've learned. I learned that I learned that art was blooming during the 16th century. Um, it was a respected profession, and there was room for appreciation for it during Titian's time. It was a very traditional technique, and artists were becoming more popular and famous. However, during the 19th century, Monet had to fight for the respect that he wanted from the viewers. Monet believed in art, but his parents did not. And in the 19th century, artists did not care about becoming famous. All they wanted was a platform to display their art and point of view. Both artists used women to portray some of their beliefs and values of their culture during their time. Venus painted Venus painted nude by Titian represented a flawless beauty and significance of a woman and the expectations of her role as a wife to her husband. Her being nude is a representation of Venus, of the goddess of love, exemplifying eroticism and power for both women in very different aspects. It was a way of freedom, using the art as a form to represent a woman in nude in the state without censorship. As Monet paints Olympia nude because she is a representation of a prostitute or a courtesan during his time. I believe that it suggests or speaks to the woman's comfortability with being nude due to her occupation. And during this time, this was a very bold and controversial statement. This work of art raised a lot of controversy and was frowned upon during the modern day society. These projects were so different because of the style of the artists and the era in which both pieces were painted. One painter was more concerned with the representation of the woman in the family and portraying her in a goddess form, as Monet preferred to paint what he believed to be true to him and how he viewed the world around him. These paintings are different because of their meanings. I would like to believe Titian was a more structured artist that painted what pleased the eye and would draw artistic respect. Monet, on the other hand, drew to bring out what he believed to be true, even if it did bring about controversial arguments among the viewers. He painted to stimulate the minds of the viewers. Titian drew to speak to the beauty and genuine nature of art. Again, I hope that you gained as much information as I did, learning about two different artists and two different time frames, pretty much drawing almost the same picture, but with completely different meanings, and how it can be portrayed to the viewer. And just learning that one image can have so many different meanings, and it can have so many different viewpoints, and it can have so many different perspectives based on who's drawing it and who's even looking at it, and even based on the error that it was drawn in. So again, my name is Tina Fenton, and this is my CFA project. You have an awesome day.